I have several enemies in the vegetable garden, but I have to say squirrels are probably near the top. Every early spring and late fall, the squirrels are just trying to wreak havoc on my garden. If you've ever come out to your garden and noticed little divots in your soil, or you have seedlings that have been dug up and are flopped over, you likely have a squirrel problem. What's happening is those squirrels in the spring and fall are looking for or trying to hide food in your soil. And so I have tried everything over the years. I did the cayenne pepper, I've tried the sprays, the fake owls. We have dogs that I thought would maybe scare them away. They don't. And so I feel like I've tried everything, but I've been gardening now for 8 years. And the last several years, I really found what I truly believe is the best option. And that is just to cut off all access to your containers or your garden. And I do that by covering them. And the advantages to doing this actually go beyond just the squirrels. I always plant out my transplants and seeds before my last frost date. I'm just an impatient vegetable gardener. And so here in Zone 6B, what I'll do is in the early spring, I will cover my garden in containers with a frost cover. And so that's actually going to allow me to extend that growing season. And then once the weather gets a little warmer in late spring, I'm going to switch over to a netting. The thing with the squirrels is I personally have found here in Missouri that usually by late April, the squirrels are no longer a problem for me. Either my plants have gotten so big that they really can't access the soil, but also by then there's just more food available for them. And so they're not, necessarily digging up food that they had hidden in the late fall and winter. Now, how I cover my garden is you don't want to just put whether it be frost cover or netting like directly on your plants because if it's touching your plants, then that's, going to kind of squish them and they're not going to grow very well. So what I have used, and I've literally had these exact ones for years, they last a long time, is I do these adjustable hoops. And so they actually come apart in pieces. And it's great because you can add pieces as your plants get taller. And so I've used these, I have a ton of them because I have a lot of different containers and raised beds. And so what you're going to do is you're just going to put them in the soil. And for raised bed like this, I'll do three. I have some smaller containers where I'll just do two of the hoops. So, just kind of test it out, see how many you need for your space. And then once I have all of them in, you just take whatever you're using to cover them. And on like this raised bed, I will just use rocks to keep it down because you can't just cover it and walk away. The wind, and different things will blow it off. So you do need to secure it. If you're doing an in-ground garden, you can get those like landscape little metal. I think they're called a staple maybe, but you can use that to keep it in the ground. On some of my containers where I have an edge on it, I just get some spring clamps and I use that to keep it down. So, you might need to be a little creative with how you're holding it down in your garden. One other advantage that I want to talk about for the spring with covering is that my other enemy this time of year is the cabbage moth. And so that's another one where if your garden is covered, that cabbage moth can't come lay eggs on your brassicas, your kales, your cabbages, your broccoli. And so you're not going to have as many cabbage moth issues, which is always a problem in the spring. So that is my approach to how I keep the squirrels out. Like I said, I feel like I've tried all the things over the years, and this really is the only thing that has worked. The only disadvantage is that it just doesn't look very nice. And that is something, we spend a lot of time in our outdoor space. And so it's not as nice to look at, a garden that's covered in netting. But I will tell you, I would take that any day over coming out in the mornings and finding all my newly planted seeds, dug up or my seedlings flopped over. It's just kind of a short term inconvenience to save your spring vegetable garden. And so, I do have to take them off when I water, but it's not a big deal. And it's something that I will happily do to keep the squirrels and the cabbage moths out of the garden.